All right. Somehow, some way, here we are. This is Jay Brown Yoga Talks podcast. My name is Jay Brown. Welcome to you if you're new. All the rest of y'all, what's up? How are you doing? Are you in like a normal moment in your life, like part of your usual routine right now? Well, I'm not. I gotta say, in the 7 years that I've been doing this show, there have been occasions where I've had to go to some unusual lengths to make an intro happen. You know, sometimes it was just like crunch time. I'd be up late at night in the attic. Long-time listeners, you remember that. That's happened many times on the show at this point. And there's been other random occasions here or there where I've just been unusual circumstances or traveling and I'm in a hotel room or something like that. And I'm like recording in some strange place. And I mentioned last week that I was going to my in-laws in Virginia, which is, you know, something I do a couple times a year. Well, I'm still in Virginia. And normally I would try to bring you a little flavor, like a little touch of the nature that I commune with while I'm here. But that didn't happen because, frankly, I had to choose whether or not to work on the show or make memories with my family and actually do the communing with the nature, not the trying to record something about the communing or whatever, you know? So I chose to be present with what was happening and not work on the show. And I think it was definitely the right choice. But now, it's late at night. Everyone else is asleep. And I'm out in my car, in my pajamas, recording this right now. But it's my only option. I'm driving home tomorrow. I'm not going to be able to do it when I get back. That would be past the deadline. So, hey, this is what we got to do. And here's the thing. Where I am in Virginia, there's no lights anywhere. So I'm in pitch black right now, sitting in my car. I can't see anything. It's just blackness all around me. There's something kind of magical about that. And here's the thing. As I mentioned, I normally try to bring like a little flavor of my trip with me. And today's episode does that all on itself because I recorded this talk with Rose Bennett 3 days ago while I was here in Virginia. And frankly, that's unusual. Normally, there's probably between 2 weeks and 5 weeks even between when I normally record with someone and then post an episode. But in this instance, Robin has this course that she's doing in mid-September in like 3 weeks or so. And if you are listening to this on the day that it's coming out, August 22nd, then you can attend a free intro session with her tomorrow, August 23rd. So if you're one of those people who listens to this the day it comes out every week, well, then you can get in on the thing tomorrow. We'll put a link in the description. And if you catch it late, if you miss that, not to worry, you still have until mid-September to sign up for the course. In any case, Robin also is affectionately referred to sometimes as a green witch. So those of you who've been listening to this show have heard me inquiring into animism and talking about singing out to the trees and communing with nature. Well, Robin is someone who speaks the language and can act as a guide, and it was a great pleasure to have an opportunity to meet with her and connect with her while I was here. And I'm just delighted to be able to bring that conversation to you today. Real quick before we get to that, I do have an announcement. You may have heard this, you may not. I'm starting another group for my online yoga teacher training in January. And we are offering some early bird pricing. If you sign up before October 1st, you get 50% off. Yup, you heard that. 50% off the price. It's a year-long program. Counts for a 500-hour certificate, but it's definitely not about the hours. It's about an inquiry. And if you want to learn more about it, you can go to jbrownyoga.com/training and find out a bunch of stuff there. And if you're interested in being an early bird and registering before October 1st, getting a 50% discount, then email me. Email me at j@jbrownyoga.com. That's just the letter J at jbrownyoga.com. And just tell me you're interested and I will send you some information. All right, y'all, that's the deal. I hope this is going to do. It's just going to have to. I will touch base with you on the other side for a moment, but we're going to go ahead and just get to it, all right? Let's go ahead and listen to this conversation that I had with Robin Rose Bennett. Hello.
Hi, Jay.
Hi, Robin.
How are you?
I'm doing okay. Nice to meet you.
And you as well. I'm just, I've been working inside all day, so I'm just getting myself comfortable outside as we meet each other. We have a minute, right, before we're going to record officially.
I mean, I am recording now, and I usually like to just start, but if you need a few moments, you can certainly have them.
I'll tell you what,
I love that you're going outside, honestly. I'm close to being outside, but not quite.
All right. Well, just do one thing. I think I'll put the headset in and you can tell me if this works well from your end. Now I'm without it and with it.
I think maybe we go with.
All right. I mean, actually, if there's any problem, I actually have like a really professional microphone. I didn't hook that all up because I didn't think we'd need it.
No, it's okay. We can go like this.
All right.
All right. Well, then, are you good? Are you settled in?
Yep. Oh, let me just turn off my mail so we don't keep getting
ding on us.
Yeah, so many dang dings these days.
I turn all that stuff off. I don't like those dings. I don't like my email telling me when to look at it.
I'm right with you. I don't do notifications or any of that, but the only thing I can't turn off on my laptop is if someone messages me, but let's not worry about it. So okay. Right now it's just us.
Well, I so appreciate the moment for us to have this bit of connection of just us. I know we've never met before, and it's a little bit of some lovely happenstance that brings us together, and I really appreciate you giving me your time today. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. Appreciate you having me on.
Well, I don't know that I really told you the story. I might have mentioned it in the email to you.
You didn't. I am all ears. Tell me the story.
Okay. Well, the story I'm going to tell is just a brief one about the circumstances that bring us together, really.
Okay, great.
And, somebody, I wish I could remember their name, and I can't remember their name. I looked for the email and couldn't find it, but there's a listener of this show who deserves some credit for it.
Okay.
Because they've been listening to the show for a long while, and they've been sort of following along with some inquiries that I've been on. And they are the one who said, "Oh, you should talk with Robin." And I wrote your name down on a list some while back, and recently, kind of for no real reason, reached out to you. But now I kind of have a good sense of why. As I got ready to talk to you today, I was like, oh, now I know why I'm talking to Robin today.
Okay.
And it basically is a little bit of like a flashback moment for me, where when I first got into yoga many years ago, like when it first became like a very serious thing in my life, I went to visit my father, and I heard him describing what I was doing to someone else as, oh, he's off hugging trees.
Ah, okay.
And I really resented it. I was like, no way, I'm engaging in serious study of Eastern philosophy and yoga. I was like, I'm not hugging trees, you know? And, you know, you fast forward 30 years and I'm literally hugging trees and like talking to them. And
I'm so glad to hear that.
And I say that to you as someone who's sort of like skeptical of that kind of thing in the past. And I think that I've come to it just through an honest inquiry and through meditation. And, you know, a lot of other people have come on the show and I've been exploring the threads with them from a lot of different angles. Even Nishala, I know you know Nishala, she came on.
Yes, I listened. There was a very loud noise outside. Is it coming through your end, or are you okay?
I'm not hearing it. I think it's okay.
Excellent. Okay. It will pass quick. There's some landscape work that just decided to pick our moment to start.
Well, we'll let the randomness of the environment have its way and we'll go with it.
Right? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I was saying that Nishala's been on the show many times, I think 4 times. And it was only the most recent visit that I think you just mentioned you listened to, where she was talking about nature too.
Yes, exactly.
And then I've had a bunch of folks on from like, you know, like morphic resonance and energy fields.
Gorgeous. Yeah.
And then even more just like I had Sophie Strand and Joshua Schrei, just animism as like an idea, and even how like 99% of our ancestry all had a relationship to the environment different from the one that I was born into.
Correct.
So in any case, all of this is to come to say that I've been having these conversations with people about receiving communication from nature and singing to nature. And it's new territory for me. And I'm trying to find ways to talk about it, because sometimes, as I've even heard you discuss before, like when you try to talk about it and someone says, you mean you're actually talking to a tree? There's like a look on someone's face where you can tell where they're anywhere near where you could talk about the same thing or something. So in any case, this is maybe getting a long-winded way of introducing why I think you're here, because it seems to me from what I've been learning, you're someone who's been having this conversation for a lot longer than me.
I think that's fair to say. And, you know, I am very practical as well as, you know, deeply spiritual. And I'm not interested in particularly in like, you know, just the woo-woo kind of spirituality. I'm very much engaged in, you know, embodied, right? And so like in yoga, we have, right. It's always interesting to me that in yoga, we work with the body. And yet there's this element of spirituality as transcendence, right? Like to be in it, but to transcend. Whereas the spirituality of an herbalist like myself, or as I have been labeled by the outside world, right? A green witch like me, is about immanence, right? The embodied spirit, the IMMANENCE. Many people think I'm saying a different word when I say that, but immanent spirituality, the spirituality that lives in a stone, in the tree that you kiss, you know, and so here we are. And, you know, it's interesting to me to think about that, like our worldview has become so narrow that we think human beings are the only ones with consciousness. Like to me, you know, even the way someone might give you like, you know, the roll of the eyes when you talk about hugging a tree, or that you felt a message maybe from a pine or or a willow or what have you. To me, it's startling even the arrogance that we would think that we two-leggeds are the only ones of consciousness. I'm just going to stop there for a minute and see where you want to.
Well, no, I love it. I love that because it's what I'm trying, it's the balance I'm trying to strike, because to me, I've come to this from a very pragmatic place, that it seems to me life is not as fixed as we're often led to believe. It seems much more malleable. And I would say, honestly, through an honest inquiry into yoga practice, it does lead to like a consciousness-based reality. And the implications of that on, like you said, there's different philosophical viewpoints on whether or not you're trying to transcend or whether you're trying to integrate, like from a more tantric viewpoint. And if it is about integration and we're living in a consciousness-based reality, then indeed everything around us is consciousness-based, including the plants.
Well, we're the only ones who've forgotten.
Yes.
Right? We literally are the only ones who've forgotten. And we can, I always, when I say I don't want to be just like pie in the sky, woo woo, ungrounded spirituality, one of the, because we don't need more of that right now. What we need is really, we need thoughtful, discerning, nuanced, explorations and understandings and sharings of everything that matters right now, because let's face it, our lives are on the line. The earth will survive. The earth is way capable of surviving all of our trespasses, if you will. But I mean, as far as I look at it, I think I just had 17 thoughts intersect at once. So let me try to unravel and make sense of what I'm saying. One, we are in a process of inevitable evolution. That's just the way it is. We are evolving because everything on earth is always evolving. And one of my litmus tests, if you will, that's maybe not the perfect expression, but I think it will translate the idea I'm trying to convey. One of my litmus tests or truth tests, if you will, of spirituality, of messages from trees, of, what have you, plant communication, is there a mirror a discernible mirror in the physical reality, in the material world, for what we are discussing spiritually? So if if there is, then I'm going further with it. And if there isn't, I'm going to take that concept with a great big grain of salt until I see otherwise, because everything is laid out for us with mirrors, right? The as above, so below. We are meant to look into the mirror of nature to see the truth of ourselves as interrelated. So in talking about communication, we don't need so much to talk to trees. We need to listen to them.
Well, yes. I mean, right? What I heard you just saying, forgive me just for a moment, that it seems really important.
Please, no.
That we've been talking about communication with the beyond, and you're saying that the communication with beyond is only so good as it mirrors back what we're experiencing here.
Yeah, and how we're going to live our lives on the earth and how we're going to treat one another. So it's, for me, the most straightforward expression of this reality that you've been, dipping your toe into and wanting to feel the truth of more, is that we would not be breathing without the exhalation of the plants and trees. Literally, every exhale that they give of this oxygen that they can't use, we then inhale, right? And without which we would not be alive. And then we exhale and give out the carbon dioxide that for our bodies is metabolic waste. But if we want to reframe this into a more expansive, beautiful, living world picture, that exhalation that you give of your carbon dioxide, that all of us do, that's your giveaway to the plants and trees that they then inhale, right? And so there's this intimate dance of relationship that is always happening. whether we're paying attention to it or not.
I know. And I guess it seems so obvious when you say it like that. But I guess there's a difference between it being like a concept and, like you were saying earlier, an embodied experience of sorts.
Right, an experience. And here we come to the nub. In order to experience the living reality of consciousness is different than our own, whether we're talking about the little house plant that I'm stroking right now, a beautiful velvety leaf, or the hawk that just flew into my clothesline moments before we were getting together in a very startling moment. I thought that was a pretty cool thing that just happened right before we were to get together. Right? It was intense. It was intense. We have to stop and pay attention. Right? And there is the nub. There's the rub. There's the thing that in our time is so needed and so frowned upon, if you will. We have to quiet down to hear the messages of our kin who don't speak in the same kind of way, even if, it's French or it's Spanish or it's English, right? They don't speak that way. They speak differently.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? I think that's something I've thought a lot about recently in terms of, how do you communicate with nature? Like, what's the language that it speaks in?
Right. So it speaks, let me speak for plants right now, plants and trees. Right. So they speak to us. I'm outside, so I'm looking at them and they're all listening. I'm saying, I'm speaking. You speak to us in color, in placement, in leaf shapes, in flowers, in fruits, in seeds, in timing, in rhythms, in cycles of growth, right? They speak to us in all those ways, or even how they'll move. People tend, I should say, to think plants are passive. Plants are not passive. And, it's always interesting for herbalists and other people who either work with plants or study plants, how science catches up with us. That's going to sound really hubristic, but I'm going to stand behind it.
Seems like they catch up with the mystics every once in a while, right?
Precisely. They catch up with the mystics. Science and physics catches up. And then as cultures, as world cultures, we catch up more slowly, even just as an example. And then I want to come back to what you said about how do we do it? How do we learn to listen to them? And hopefully I helped a little bit with my, just giving a few examples of that they speak to us in their very being, right? And again, in their colors, in their shapes, and I'll give an example. Let's see. Let's talk about a plant most people know. How about dandelion? Right? Dandelion grows most all over the world. Dandelion is, of course, pulled out of lawns and poisoned and all of that. But dandelion roots down into the earth and brings nutrients up to make them more bioavailable to the other plants. Like, how extraordinary is that when you think about it? And if you were to move a dandelion, like, let's say you were like, I love these dandelions, but I don't want them right here. I want them over there. In our very human way, we do that, right? Sometimes
it would look better over there or whatever.
It'll look better. It'll look better. I know. I always laugh when someone says that plant's ornamental. I'm like, well, it may think it's a little more than that, but I hear you. So when we move that dandelion, let's say we early spring, so that it's going to survive because it's not like super rooted yet. And okay, so we move it over. The moment we move that dandelion into a different part of the soil, it begins to change its own chemistry to be able to thrive in this new home. Like, that's mind-boggling to me. That's mind boggling. Like, we don't know how to do that. We don't know how to do that. And then there's dandelion, like, if I almost might do better to take that people don't know, but I want you who are listening to this now to be able to picture. So imagine a field full of these golden flowers, right? That are, if you didn't know that they're a quote unquote weed, right? Which people like weeds much better when I call them wildflowers. Wildflowers are right? Yeah. Wildflowers are fabulous. Weeds, So I work a lot with teaching people about the most common plants because I'm a medicinal herbalist as well, right? And so it's vitally important that everyone has access to medicine as we used to have. And this medicine is going to become ever more vitally important as our time goes on here. I wish I could say that, oh yes, things are going to chill out and it's going to get less intense in our lifetime, but that's not what I see. That's not what I see. And so one of the things that plants are brilliant at is helping us to learn how to root into our own place inside of ourselves, where we belong, being authentically us. Like dandelion, I've never met a dandelion who pined after being, I don't know, a daffodil. It's perfectly happy being a dandelion. It doesn't want to be a rose. It doesn't want to be a tulip. It's a dandelion. So going back to that field of golden yellow, it grows out of that deep, dark implanting in the soil, right? And brings up the nutrients for itself and for everybody else around it. So it's very community minded, is dandelion, helps improve the soil for everyone else. And then puts out these super nourishing leaves that can help people's kidneys, that can help reduce high blood pressure, that can help give beautifully bioassimilable vitamin A in the form of beta carotene, calcium, so all of that. But then up comes those stalks with those gorgeous flowers. And one of the spiritual messages that I've gotten from dandelion is, I bring light into the darkness. I bring light up out of the darkness. Right? And so from that deep dark rooting in the soil comes these golden, like each one is like a sun. And somehow, not only consuming in the form of medicine, tea, tincture, vinegar, what have you. I don't know how detailed you want me to get on that level. I'm happy to, kind of go wherever we go. But even just sitting with them can wake up somebody's joy. And I'm saying this from 35 years of experience of working with, kind of being a liaison between people and plants. And I see how universal it is. Plants help people return to their joy. And I think it's something about plants being in themselves so deeply, and they have this way of helping us reclaim our natural joy over time to such an extent that it's like, I see it as the joy becomes a container strong enough to also hold our grief without us drowning in the grief, right? Because we are in a time which has many things we can be very, that we can grieve over and that we need to grieve over, right? But there is a difference between feeling that as a healing expression of truth and drowning in it as despair. And that's a real challenge of the times that we're in, right? It's the worst time. It's the worst time to give over to despair. It truly is. Now is like, this is the crux point of awakening our love and our spirits and our true gifts.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you for everything you just said. And this word that you used, crux, is a good one. You wouldn't know this, but I've been going through all kinds of just personal crisis with my youngest daughter, who's been having trouble with her mental health, and part of this inquiry for me has been that at some point I needed guidance. Like, I needed guidance from like a deeper spirit place, like
Understood.
In order to like know which path to go, you know, and realized how much that's really what my yoga has always been about. And that's how much of what I think yoga is about. And that ultimately, you know, for a long time, I think in the yoga world, and when it went mainstream, I talked about this with Nishala, and I talked about this Angela Farmer, who I know you also know.
Oh, deeply, yes. Beautiful.
You know, they're both significant figures for me in this, because yoga really went in a direction, you know, when it went mainstream, and everybody wanted to use science as the lens to make us more legitimate. And
yes. Angela in particular is truly a kindred to me.
Mm-hmm.
Truly a kindred spirit. And the same thing has happened and is still happening in many arenas, including in herbalism, where the herbalist is now supposed to be, you know, the scientist and the doctor and the, you know, in other words, the old ways of knowing, and nothing's mutually exclusive, but it's not the essence. It's not the heart of it. So again, science catches up here too. And you know, one of the herbalists who I guess she was a generation older than me, beautiful woman, Cascade Anderson Geller, who is now too young, in my opinion, an ancestor, but we have to trust that, don't we? Yes, we do. But so Cascade said once in a workshop, and I'll always hold this dear. She said, you know, I have had to, in my teaching, I have had to go back, or wished I could go back to students and correct something that I shared, something that I said as truth, that I learned, you know, from science about our medicine, about our herbs. But I've never had to go back and or wish I could go back to correct something that I shared about our medicine, about our herbs, that came from tradition, that came from what I consider much more empirical than science, from our actual years, centuries, millennia of usage, of experience, of working with the plants, with people. And so when she said that, I was very grateful, right? And I'm not dissing science, but what I am saying is, I trust experience. I trust, okay, check out, this is a great word. You're going to love this, Jay. Organoleptic learning, where you're learning from your own senses. And so that's what I really try to teach my students. I don't try, I do it. I teach them, you know, how to taste, smell, feel physically with your fingers. What is knowing that a plant is velvety? Tell you about its physical medicine, right? And so like here again, let's just look at an example of physical and spiritual medicine, a plant that's very important in the time of COVID, right? I know you want podcasts to be timeless, I'm imagining, right? But here we are. And,
it's okay. Yeah,
right?
This is where we are. This is where we are.
This is where we are. And if you, and we'll always need to breathe. So there you go. Mm-hmm. If we feel a mullein leaf, it's rather, well, it has one of its nicknames is velvet dock there. That gives you an idea right there, right? And then if we take the mullein into us as an herbal medicine, say as a infusion, which is a medicinal strength tea, you know, or a tincture, or even have an infused oil of it where the leaves or flowers of this beautiful wildflower are infused in olive oil, right? So these are home processes that people can do. That's why I'm making a point of saying an infused oil, not an essential, but where someone would take a plant, cut it up, put it in olive oil, and a month or two later has a medicine. If you ingest this plant, what it does is it softens hardened mucus in the bronchia and hardened mucus in the lungs. So here's the plant. We can feel the softness of the leaves. It softens, hardens congested material that might be keeping us from breathing fully. I use it a lot for people with asthma. We even also smoke dried mullein leaves for asthma, which seems super counterintuitive, right? But the smoke inhaled actually causes the bronchia to dilate. And so that's a sort of more acute medicine for asthma, whereas the drinking of it really can shift the condition in the longer term. And so again, and even the mullein plant is a 2-year, it lives for 2 years, unless it didn't read the book. Then sometimes it might live for 1 or 3, because the plants never read the books. But as far as I know, right? But in a typical mullein, it lives for 2 years. And this is kind of cool. The first year, it opens in this beautiful rosette of these velvety leaves, big leaves, right? Opens like a lotus, right? This beautiful kind of feminine, open, yin sort of looking plant. Then, let's say you're in a temperate climate, the autumn comes, the winter comes, the leaves die back, and all the energy of the plant, the life force, goes back down into the root over the winter. Then in this next spring of the second year, the mullein plant opens up again, makes this beautiful rosette. But this year, what happens, in year 2, what happens is this stalk, this really potent looking stalk, comes right up out of the center of the rosette and grows quite tall. It can be 4 feet, 5 feet, 6 feet, 7 feet, it just depends on the conditions. And you've got this like rather phallic, mega stalk coming up out of the center of the rosette. And that's what grows these beautiful little yellow flowers that are very famous herbally for helping with ear infections and ear pain. But the point is, we have a medicine that's teaching us, if we're learning plant language, how do we learn? We look, we sit, we taste, we touch, we smell, we observe, we listen. This plant is right on the surface teaching us about being both open and close to the earth, right? Mm-hmm. And growing tall and looking far. And we all as humans, we need both of those skills, right? We need those. We need that ability to root in the earth, to stay close to the earth, and yet to also lift up, and lengthen that spine and look out. And so this is part of plants. To me, it's all metaphor. It's all metaphors or mirrors showing us the truth of who we are. And my thought really is that this is our purpose, is to become who we came here to be, which is each of us ourself, and our children. You mentioned your daughter. I mean, our children are struggling. I'm seeing this. It's so, this crux time is so hard on the children, right? We're like in this bridge time between where we are and where we're going. So much unknown, so many confused adults. It's really hard on our children. And yet, it's like the oak tree in the acorn, who she is here to become herself, right? It's in there. It's in there, with food and water and love and sun. She's growing, and the other children, they're growing into who they came here to be. But it's hard on them. I know it. I see it around me to an alarming degree.
Yeah, and it's interesting because what you say is so true, that on some level, it's understandable that she would be so upset about the way things are. And to your other points that you were making, I think for a long time, I've always thought of, food as a medicine. And I whatever you're putting into your system, a lot of people in the yoga world study Ayurveda, and it's so much about having a sense of your inputs in relationship to nature. And even, there's tree pose in yoga, which I've been touching for years. But in a lot of those things, frankly, it was still very much about me. That's been a big switch. I talked about that with Nishla, about tree pose becoming about trees rather than my internal state. And when you talk about, medicine in the plants, and like the crux that we're in right now. And what was the word you said? Organoleptic? What was the word? I didn't catch it.
There you go. Organoleptic.
Organoleptic. I think I understand what organoleptic means.
It literally means using your senses. So like, you know what sour is because you've bitten into a lemon.
Right. You have your own somatic experience that you're going
exactly, your own direct somatic experience. And what I think the plants do so amazingly is they give people their own direct somatic experience of this.
If you are hearing this message, then you're listening to the free version of J. Brown Yoga Talks. To hear the rest of our conversation, please subscribe to Podcast Premium at jbrownyoga.com/premium.